Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent and locally owned bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of virtual events coming up, including a yoga event on Tuesday with Laura Staton in conversation with Liz Owen and Holly Leibowitz Rossi, and an In the Heights event with Lin-Manuel Miranda, Chiara Alegria Hudes, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Jeremy McCarter, moderated by America Ferrara, also on Tuesday, and that's going to be a great event.
Oh, wow. Yes, I can hardly,
Yeah,
I love her.
yeah. So you can register for these and all our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com. And that's also where you can purchase tonight's book, The Summer of Lost and Found, and I will send out a link later. If you have any questions for the authors, please type them into the Q&A section and we will get to as many questions as we can. We're very excited to welcome Mary Alice and Nancy. I want to tell you a little bit about them and then I will turn the event over to them. Mary Alice Monroe is the New York Times bestselling author of 27 books. More than 7.5 million copies of her books have been published worldwide, and she's earned numerous accolades and awards, including induction into the South Carolina Academy of Authors Hall of Fame. Her bestselling novel, The Beach House, is a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, and she has also published 2 children's books. Mary Alice is the co-creator and co-host of the weekly web show and podcast, Friends in Fiction, featuring 5 best-selling authors with stories, special guests, and a way to connect readers and writers. The coastal southern landscape is a strong and important focus of many of Mary Alice's novels. She immerses herself in both academic research and hands-on volunteering to learn about a species or conservation issue. Bottlenose dolphins, monarch butterflies, shorebirds, and loggerhead sea turtles are among the wild species she has worked with and woven into her novels. She's an active conservationist and serves on the South Carolina Aquarium Board Emeritus and several other conservation organizations' boards. She's especially proud to be a 20-year plus state certified volunteer with the Island Turtle Team, the group that first sparked her love for loggerhead sea turtles and is the inspiration of her Beach House series. And how she has time to do anything, I do not understand. But Nancy Thayer is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 30 novels, including her most recent, Family Reunion. Her work has been translated into many languages, and her novels have been considered or excerpted in several literary reviews and magazines. And I didn't mean considered, I meant condensed. I apologize. Nancy was a fellow at the Bread Loaf Writers Conference in 1981. In 2015, she was awarded the Romantic Times Career Achievement Award for mainstream fiction. Born in Kansas, Nancy has been a resident of Nantucket for 35 years, where she currently lives with her husband, Charlie, and a precocious rescue cat named Callie. Her daughter is the novelist Samantha Wilde. And without further ado, I will turn the event over to Mary Alice and Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. It's always so good to talk with you, Nancy. We started our chat, everybody, in the green room. We just can't wait. We just have to talk.
I want to tell you, watchers, you participants, if you see something going back and forth next to Mary Alice, she has a dog in her lap because Mary Alice.
Actually, I don't know if you can see here. That's one. Here's the other one. That's the tail. That's my Bernese mountain dog.
I know you have a Bernese mountain dog, and then you have a, I'm going to
Cavalier. Here's the Cavalier. And I have another one over there, but she's being good, unlike these two. And you have a cat who visits.
I know I do. She's a rescue cat, and she's very temperamental. I don't think she's as soothing as these beautiful dogs you have. So I want to start off, I want to talk about 100 things with you, but I want to start off talking about The Summer of Lost and Found.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how you were brave enough to write a book set during the COVID?
Oh.
Yeah.
It was, I was saying, while I've been talking about the book, what I thought was an inspired decision, and I've heard it called brave, like you just said, but I think I had no idea what I was doing, because this is the first novel that came out, and I wasn't even thinking about timing and all that when I wrote the book. I just began at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. That would have been late February. I was coming back. I think I told you, from South America, and I'd been studying there, and I didn't even know that I actually caught COVID. At that time, no one knew what it was. I just had a horrible virus. And then I went up to my house in the North Carolina. I live in South Carolina, but because of hurricanes, I also have a little house in North Carolina, or had. And I was going up there to open it up. It was April, early April, and April is when the shelter in place order came. And we all have to remember where we were, April 8th, 9th, 10th, depending on the state. But shelter in place is a wartime phrase. I didn't realize that at the time. It's used in wartime, which means do not leave the area. Do not evacuate. Stay in place until the all clear is given. So when you think about that, that's pretty frightening. It was never fully explained that it's a wartime phrase. And so I just stayed in North Carolina, and my children from the cities in Chicago took over my beach house. So I couldn't go home. I just was, you can stay there. And I stayed in North Carolina. And what it meant for me as a writer, two different worlds, like me as an individual person, and then me as a writer like you, Nancy, with a deadline. As I wasn't going to go off, and I had a species I was interested in researching, and experts I would interview. I couldn't go anywhere, nowhere. That was just erased. And then I, like the rest of you, didn't have a book tour. We were all going to go out in May, is when my book, yours comes out the same time, Nancy. And so we were just at home, and we didn't know what we were going to do or what the booksellers were going to do. So I took long walks in the mountains, and I thought about my process. And what I usually do is I look at a species, I observe, I take notes, and I take what I learn and create a novel. But obviously, this was going to be different. And it occurred to me that what we were living through was an epic, memorable time in our history, like when JFK was shot, or when the Twin Towers fell. Where were you? And I thought, let's chronicle this. This is going to affect, like any war, family life and the relationships between mother, daughter, aunt and niece, husband and wife, lovers, friends. I mean, all emotions are heightened. So I thought, I want to write about the family, the human species. I'm going to observe this family. And then the family that I wanted to write about is the one I've been writing about for 20 years. I wasn't planning on writing another beach house book right now. I have 7, and this is 7 in the series. And I usually skip a few years in between. But for this book, I decided, this is the family I know so well. My readers, I'm very blessed, know this family and care about them. So I'm going to write about this family and put them into this pandemic situation. I wasn't writing about the pandemic, but about it's like when people write about World War II, they're not describing the battles. They're describing about the lives of the people during the wartime. And that's what I did in this book. And it was hard, and we can talk about this more, but I wrote it in real time.
And what does that mean? Did you know the end when you started writing? Did you know how it was going to end? Because the end was so brilliant. Yeah, and it was so new. It was so new.
Thank you for saying that. That was hard won, Nancy. Hard won, because no, I didn't know the ending. And that was different for me, because I am a structuralist in terms of writing. I get all that information together, and I create beginning, a middle, and an end. I know the denouement, I know the climax, I know the end, but I didn't know this one. So I was a pantser. I wrote by the seat of my pants, and I still thought I could handle it because, I had my outline. Well, after the first month, that outline hit the trash can. It was useless. And I was realizing that I had to put, and I only sort of understood this in retrospect, but I was writing scenarios and scenes as I was watching and observing other people live them. And so my expectations of what the story would be changed because this went on much longer than we thought it was going to last. You know, what I thought I was going to say by the end of June, my gosh, it was still going on. It didn't end in June. And then by fall, my God, no, it was still going on. So by the time I finished in December, we were beginning to see the first hints of vaccine. So I felt it was coming to a kind of a close, but my story had to close. And I really did feel that I gathered enough story and impact and resolution, but also I gathered enough personal knowledge so I knew what my message to my readers was going to be, what I learned from this experience. And that's sort of what I do for my books. What did I learn that I want to share? And I was kind of scared, even as late as November, Nancy, that I wasn't sure how it was going to end or what I was going to say. It was scary. I'll never do it again.
It should. It worked out very well.
Well, I think it did, and I just have to say I'm so grateful that it did.
With a New York Times bestseller, put that in, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to start off by asking about the main character. I think her name is pronounced Linnea.
Yes,
and
yes.
I know where that name comes from, but tell us.
Yes. Well, it's the great horticulturist Linnaeus, and she is the whole family is very involved in nature and horticulture, and I just loved the name. So I always pick names that I think. Coretta, the other heroine, is Cara, but her name is Coretta, which is the Latin coretta for loggerhead, and. So it's a name she hated growing up, but she grew into. But yeah, that's how I came with her name. So I think all the names in the book have some sort of a connection to who they are.
Yes. Well, the book starts off with Linnea losing her job at the aquarium.
Yeah.
Did you start that off in your mind? Because the book starts with this sort of explosion of emotion of what happened.
Well, I knew. Well, it's funny. It's the only thing I figured out right away at the beginning was that this was going to be introducing the next generation, the young generation. Because when I finished the last book in the series, which is why I thought it would end for a while, Cara has come full circle. My gosh, 20 years ago when I started the Beach House, and there was only one book, I didn't know it would be a series. Cara was 40 years old, and she arrived home for the last season of her mother's life. And the backdrop was the loggerhead sea turtles, but it's really this mother-daughter reconciliation novel. So Cara has, through the next 6 books, aged from 40 to 60. And she has gone from being like a sea turtle, a lone swimmer, very focused, didn't want to get married, to someone who married, who tried to have children, sort of forgot to have children because she was a career woman. And you see her mature, and suddenly in the last book becomes the matriarch, which is a nice place to be. I grew up with her. I'm the matriarch now. And it's nice to sort of look at how can I help the young rather than it's all about me. So that happened to Cara. And the opening of this book is the next generation. And Linnea loses her job. And she's living in the beach house. And the beach house is the cornerstone of the whole series. And Cara's mother, Lovey, gave it to her. And Cara lived in it and then rented it out to other women who needed help. And now she's renting it out to Linnea. And when Linnea calls her and says, I've been lost my job, which is exactly what happened to my niece.
Oh.
So when I opened up the house, so I'm writing in real time. Yeah. Okay. What happened? Wait, tell me how you feel. No. But honestly, this is what's going on in my life. And so this is when the motivation for Linnea is, Kara says, the legacy of the beach house is women helping women. It's what we do. And I forget, you don't have to worry about the rent. That's how I'm going to help you. But that's your legacy now. What are you going to do? And so throughout the book, Linnea's worried about how she can help others during a time she's floundering herself.
I thought Linnea was incredibly generous to Annabelle. Can you talk a little bit about Annabelle?
And well, I wanted you to not like her, right?
Oh, I did.
Good, I did my job.
Did not like her.
Never do. You met her before and she got a job and she's prickly.
Yes.
She's one of these chip on the shoulder girls. And, you know, she doesn't, but when you get to know someone like that, you sympathize a little more. And she did not have the family backup that Linnea had. No one said, I got your back. So when she lost her job, she had no money. Her mother was in with a new boyfriend. I mean, there was no place for her to go. And that's when Linnea said, you can live with me. And later, and later as they lived together, the roommate situation was unpleasant.
Yes.
And it's, you know, that happens in real life. We're not all like best buddies all the time. And I think that happened to a lot of people in COVID who came home or had to, you know, share space with someone else. It wasn't all peachy keen, even though there were some good moments. Later on, her brother returns home from college and the last place he wants to live with is mom's house because of the expectations for him as the son. And that's very powerful in an old Southern family. So he ducks into this little mushroom under the mushroom and stays at the beach house. Then, of course, her boyfriend is trying to get in from Europe. And I actually had someone who I knew was trying to get in from Europe, and the airports were closing down. So that was a reality. And I thought, wow, what a great twist. And so I brought him in, and then the love triangle begins. And it all starts becoming this pod of people who live nearby each other. And I thought one of the things that I found was so important in this pandemic were people had different groups they trusted. They called them pods or trust groups, or I mean, I don't know, what other names were there? There were a lot, you know.
I think pod is because
Pod is the most popular one.
on Nantucket. Yeah.
Yeah, pod. So only people who were, you know, I'll let your kid play with mine if you promise that everyone's taking precautions. You know, everyone was worried. And the older were worried about their health, and the younger were worried about, my God, my life has ended.
Yeah.
I can't even date. My niece was bemoaning that what was the point of meeting anyone? She couldn't meet anyone. You know, there was just much less go out with anyone. So it was a standstill for them.
But for Linnea, not only did she have her boyfriend in London, who I really liked a lot because I
yes,
the file. So
he was perfect. Yes,
I was kind of rooting for him, and I'm not. No spoilers. But then John, is that his name?
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about John and the paper airplanes.
Oh, I do love the paper airplanes. I wanted to, and you know, you're working this out in your mind, and you're sleeping and dreaming and trying to create the story in real time. And I actually had things set up for me to create some interesting plot problems, because I had established that Kara's husband, David, worked in England. So I was able to bring him in sick. I wanted to get the little child involved, their adopted 6-year-old. And so Linnea had to babysit her, because that's what a lot of young women were faced with, being teachers or not. What do you do with a child all day who can't play with anybody? So I wanted to bring that in. And John was the issue of quarantine. And he's an old boyfriend of Linnea's who she's done with. He broke her heart in previous books. She's over him. She fell in love with Gordon in the last book, the perfect guy. He is a reminiscent of the first love of Lovey, the grandmother, the biologist. He's doing great things for the planet. What's not to love? And he's got a heritage to boot, and or pedigree, I should say.
I was like, okay, I am diving into this novel.
I'm so
I'll take Gordon.
I'll take Gordon. There was Teen Gordon and Teen John. And when I started the book, it was all Teen Gordon. And I honestly didn't know. And to me, as I was writing it, it created a fun scenario, because love stories are fun to write. But also it was hysterical with the guys competing one for one another. And the paper airplanes, back to that. That was when, how does he communicate? He's up in this carriage house, second floor window. And I have to post a picture. It actually exists. The beach house exists and the house next door exists. And it's one of these big wooden doors that you can open up. So if you open it up, you can see him standing there. And she's shocked he's there. But it's like, also, what are you doing here? I don't want to see you. I'm over you. She doesn't answer his email. She doesn't answer his text. She doesn't answer the phone. So he does one of these, and he comes back and he shoots an airplane down. And I love that the airplane, for me, it's communication, but it's also a bit of whimsy. Yeah. The book needed to be, we needed to remember that this was still life going on. This was still, it's the feather I loved in Forrest Gump. Or the bee in Bridgerton, just that little bit of nature that's just reminding you that this really is all love and stories, and there's a lot going on here, but this is the fun part. And I created a love triangle that ultimately made Linnea discover and dig deep what she wanted. It wasn't just a choice between two men.
Are you going to write another in this series?
Yes, I will. Not right away. I need a break. I need this other book I'm writing that we whispered about before this conversation began. I also am now writing the middle grade. So I need, when I have something I want to say about, like if we have a very bad season on turtle nests this year, and we know why. Oh yes, I'm writing another book. But until that happens, I'll wait. This other, we have a visitor.
Can you tell us about your middle grade book? I see the cover behind you.
Yes, there it is. And here's the one thing I have to show you, Nancy, that you'll find really interesting, the glare, is that when you have an adult novel, this is interesting. I didn't know this. On the back of an adult novel, you have all the quotes.
Yes.
Prints. Okay, it's like selling, but look at the back of the middle grade novel.
Oh,
it's like
it's
a painting.
Yeah.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yes, that is gorgeous. Yes.
And I'm really
to it.
And I'm thrilled. Kwame Alexander, I'm such a fan of, he's a 2-time Newbery Award winner, and he has his own imprint, Diversify. He's the one who actually got me going on writing a middle grade book. And when I was so nervous, would he like it? So I asked him for a quote, and he's in London now, so the quote's coming on the reprint, but it'll be there eventually, but it's really powerful. And he said it's fiction for children at its finest. And then he explained why. So I was a little verklempt when I read that, because it meant a lot that he liked it. But it's the story that I've always wanted to tell, because it's sort of happened with my own children. I took children to a remote island, to a place where no cars, no stores, and for the children, no internet. Grandma didn't believe in it. The Deweese Island exists. It's located right off Isle of Palms, and it's accessible only by ferry. And I love it. I would live there. I want to live there, but my husband wants a garage. And so I He won't. I'm so mad. But yeah, everywhere you look, there's something to save. You look up and oh my gosh, there's a bald eagle's nest. And oh my gosh, you're driving your little golf cart. Look at all the alligators sunning over there. It's just everywhere you look. The roseate spoonbills. Oh my gosh, what a good migration this year. It's gorgeous. And I wanted to put these kids on this island who were not accustomed to being there. So you have 3 kids who just happened to be there for the summer, and they would not have been friends if this was Atlanta. One is an army brat from New Jersey whose grandma lives on the island. His dad, Jake's dad, was hurt in the war, and so he's very seriously injured, and Mama's running down to see him. So Jake has to spend the summer with his grandmother. Not exactly what he wanted to do. And he loves her, but still. And then Macon is an African-American boy from a wealthy family of lawyers in Atlanta, and his mother is having difficulty keeping the baby. I mean, she's lost a lot of babies, so she's going to this quiet island. So, and he's the man of the house. We've all heard that. And then little Lovey, who is actually from the series of the Beach House series, she's the island girl who has to stay with her aunt because her mom is working. And these 3 kids think it's going to be the worst summer ever, but they get together. What happens is what happened to my kids in Vermont, is that they are up on a mountain, 1,000 acres, nowhere to go. They were like, oh, there's nothing to do here. And I always say boredom's a good thing. Your parents used to say, well, go find something to do, right? Not like, well, let me collect things for you to do. No, you go find something to do. And I watched my children's imagination take root. And they made forts. They had Indian names. We collected. My job was to have them collect all the flora and fauna and name the birds. And they knew the names of everything in there, what was wild. And by doing that, they were not afraid. They knew what was dangerous. They knew what wasn't, and they were careful. And so these 3 kids do the same thing. And Honey, the grandmother who's depressed, she, is letting the house go. You open the fridge, and I know this. You open the fridge, and you don't know what the meat is really. It's like, can I eat that? The mystery meat. And so Jake and his grandmother help each other. It's a really beautiful relationship. And she's a naturalist, and she's the one who gives the kids a journal and helps them to, hey, what is that drawing? Well, let's find out what that bird is. It's not just a bird. And the kids want to learn, and that's the key. They don't have to, they want to. They get in trouble. There's turtles. There's a lot of really important, serious issues. And I learned that in middle grade, you don't shy away from big issues. The kids today can take it.
They're right. They're right in the middle of the big issues.
Yes. In fact, it's important to bring it up. They've gone through it all, our kids. And with media so open, they see it all. It's how you framework the issues and the dialogue and vocabulary that is so critical to what's the word? To guide children, to inspire kids, and not to overload them or to bore them either.
Can I ask you, do you have a degree in botany? Did you study?
I did. Not in botany, although I should. I mean, I've taken master classes in horticulture and master class gardener, and I have science in my background. But my degrees, I have a double. One is English, of course. We all have that. But Japanese history, Asian culture and language. That's my graduate degree. I don't. Just throwing that out there. No, it's my passion. I'm bilingual Japanese, and I speak. I love Japanese culture, and that's where my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in.
You could not have said anything to shock me more. I didn't know this about.
It's the little surprise of my background. Don't be surprised, Nancy, when a novel about Japan does come out, because I obviously have the street cred to do it.
You have many chambers in your head.
You don't want to live there. Actually, though, writing has always been my passion. It's I think what I love is to learn something new.
Do you tell us about your process? Are you write?
Yeah, it's the process for me changed a lot after I moved to the Isle of Palms permanently. And I'd been going to Vermont all these years, and we're all conservationists and naturalists. And I had written 5 novels, and they were all based on archetypal themes. And I'm inspired by themes. That's what makes the juice flow for me as a writer. And when I was a volunteer from the turtle team. And I did it because of the metaphor my sister, who's an artist, told me. She's talked about how the turtles cried when she's in Florida, and she watched a nest, and the turtle cried tears. And the metaphor of a woman, a mother crying while she laid eggs, just I mean, wouldn't you want to write about that? So I knew nothing about sea turtles at the time. I knew about land turtles, terrapins, but not sea turtles. So I joined the turtle team when we moved to Isle of Palms, and it became clear really quickly that I was completely enamored by these ancient mariners. They're 180 million years old, and they live by instinct, and they're reassuringly consistent and resilient. And I also realized 20 years ago that they were in threatened conditions because of the crowding of the beaches. I could see the development booming 20 years ago, as in Nantucket, I'm sure you have, as most beach areas. And light disorientation, the shrimp boat nets, a lot of loss. So I thought, what can I do for my next novel? How can I write a novel that I don't want to proselytize and teach, bore my readers with information, because that's called dumping, and we know that. We've all read that book. How can I write a book that will inspire my readers in a new, different way? And so I created a process by which, and it was the first time where I studied a species, and I took what I learned from the species, and I talked to the experts in the field, and I gathered it together. And like everything else, even with Summer of Lost and Found, I observed, the people around. I watched how the locals acted around them. I watched how the tourists acted and how the professionals acted, and to put it all together to create a novel based on what I learned from the theme. The themes were abandonment, because a sea turtle is a reptile. She lays her eggs, covers them up. It's predator glut. She goes back. She never comes back to the nest. It's her biological model. But in human parallel, we see it as abandonment. Mammals nurse their youngs. And so I tried to look for parallels to create a novel. And that was The Beach House. And I never wrote a book like that. And I knew it was special, and it did hit. It had a real chord, and by word of mouth, it was my first hit, my first New York Times placement.
Did it become this the Hallmark movie?
Not until 15 years later.
Wow.
It goes to show you never know. I wrote, that was my first hit, and it greenlit my ability to write about other species, and I have. But The Beach House has been a series I came back to, but I have a lot of standalone novels about other species. But fast forward 15 years, and I'm in an airport in Atlanta airport, going home late at night, 11 o'clock, on a puddle jumper to Charleston. And I saw Andie MacDowell, the hair. And I was like all aflutter, because I'm such a fan. And here's the kick. When I was writing The Beach House, whenever I write a novel, I put pictures up around of who I think the heroine looks like. And for Kara, it was Andie MacDowell.
Wow.
So I was especially excited. So, I didn't say anything to her, Nancy. You'd have been proud. I didn't bug her. I decided I wouldn't be that author. And when we landed, you know how you get off the puddle jumper, you stand outside in that little accordion, and you wait for the luggage. Well, Andie came to stand next to me. And I was like, thank you, God. And I said, I'm Mary Alice Monroe, and I just want to say thank you. You were an inspiration for one of my characters. Andy was so kind. Here it is 11 o'clock at night. She goes, oh, well, that's nice. She has that lovely Gaffney, South Carolina accent. She goes, well, what was the name of that book? And I said, The Beach House. Well, I'm going to write that down. She picks up her paper and she writes it down. And then my luggage appeared and I said, thank you. I played fair. I wanted to talk all night, but I left and I grabbed my suitcase and I left. And as I'm walking out the airport, and this is God's truth, the old airport you had to walk out past the bookstore with a big plate glass window with a poster of my new book and all my backlist in the window. And I'm like this, walking.
Yeah.
Sure enough, Andy later told me she had to walk back and she kind of did one of these.
Oh.
She went in and bought The Beach House.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She bought it, read it, and said, I got to make a movie of this. And that's what happened. That's serendipity at its finest. It meant to be, right? And we're friends to this day. Yeah. Andy McDowell is a wonderful woman. She loves nature. She's a strong supporter, not just of turtles, but of all wildlife. And I really love her to death.
That's a beautiful story. And as an author, as a writer, that makes me think that there is a dog in your book, The Summer of Lost and Found.
Yes. Oh, here she is. Hey, everybody. This is Luna. I'd like to introduce you to Luna in the book. Isn't she a pretty little girl?
She is so pretty. Oh,
yeah,
she's beautiful.
This is Luna, and she is the puppy in the book. I mean, how many people, going back to the story, what went on in COVID, a lot of people adopted dogs.
Yes.
You know, the COVID pets. So I thought, okay, I have to include that. And she was the puppy when I wrote the book. So she...
People are very appreciative. I'm seeing little...
Hi, Luna.
Everybody loves Luna.
She's a good girl. She is no French kisses. I don't like the French kisses. She's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and this color is called Blenheim, the blue, the brown and white, and then the Cosmo was what we call the tricolor, and there's the whole color. It's a wonderful breed. It really is. Well, so she's in the book.
She's in the book. You have a lot of characters in the book, and they're all different. They're different ages. Some of them are related. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't have.
Yes.
I apologize. I don't have earbuds, but a lot of them come from, well, of course, from your earlier Beach House books. So we're sort of returning to people we know.
Yes.
Except for Gordon. Oh, and who was the woman, the other British woman?
Oh, Pandora. Yeah, you're supposed to. The one who only wears, you know, if she wants you to know what brand her clothing is.
Yes.
We all know her too, don't we? And I think it all becomes clear at the end, especially when you realize who, you know, Gordon displays who he is at the end, and there's no villain here. That's the beauty of it. I think all the characters, even Annabelle, who became Anna in the book, she dropped the bell. She represented a lot of kids like my niece who were depressed. You know, they felt lifeless. They had nothing. But in the course of that time of self-reflection and not working a job that they had to do, they found out maybe what they really wanted to do, and they went back to school. So there were some founds. You know, Annabelle found a direction, and I think for Linnea at the end, when Kara and her talk again, and she revisits that question of the legacy, and Linnea's falling apart. She's just giving and giving and giving, as women do. And I love that scene on the beach. I only wrote that at the very end.
Oh,
And you asked me if I knew the ending. I didn't know until I wrote this scene. And it's because I went out on the beach. And I sat there, and so many nights as a turtle lady, as on the team, we go out at night when the nest is due to hatch. When it's a very dark night, we have to be there because sea turtle hatchlings in nature go towards the brightest light, which would be the moon and the stars over the ocean. For over 100 million years, that worked. But with the advance of electricity and ambient light of the cities, we see the hatchlings that come out. It's up on a dune, so they begin going down towards the ocean. But as soon as they see that ambient light, that bright light, they just turn right around and go back, and that's certain death. So we sit there at night to watch. Sometimes we actually put a light in the ocean and listen. I have stood in the ocean at night. Now, I've got to tell you, that's true love, because anyone who lives near an ocean knows you don't go in the ocean at night,
no.
not with a bright light. So that's true love.
No.
And for all of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it's feeding time for sharks. So Linnea and Kara are out there on a dark night that's so thick you can't see anything. There's no moon or stars, but you can hear the ocean in the background. And it's that I find the roar of an ocean, that in and out of the tide, very reassuring. And I wanted nature to be reassuring for my readers during this novel because we need it during this time. And the whole coming of the turtles is reassuring that nature continues despite whatever craziness is going on with humans. One turtle has seen many Napoleons, as Thoreau said. So these two are sitting on the beach and it's so thick and they're hearing the ocean, but that it's hitting midnight. And it's really true when we're out there early in the early hours of the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock after midnight. It's colder and it's quieter, and the air thickens somehow, the density of silence. And that's when Kara and Linnea can talk honestly about how she's falling apart. And when Kara tells her, you have to take care of yourself. You can't just keep giving. This selfish is a good thing. And Linnea, something clicks when she realizes it's really not about Gordon or John. And that, I think, is something and I know at our age. But at 25, you don't know. You have to understand, I put myself first, my needs, my growth. We know she's a baby. Yeah. And when she makes that conscious realization that I am taking care of me first, everything just falls in place. She sees with fresh eyes.
You do something with all of the people. You do something again. I know you love sea turtles, but for the human beings out there listening, I want to tell you, this book is so inspiring. And what Mary Alice does with the plot, with the people in the book, I wasn't prepared for. I was surprised. And I thought, oh, this is brilliant. Everybody should read this book. Why aren't we doing what is done in the book? And I won't tell you the end, but I think everybody should read it.
Thank you. Like I said, Nancy, truly, that was a hard one understanding. And I can say this, that for me personally, what I learned, and I hope my readers took over this a little bit, was to live each day to the fullest. And that's why I'm making strides today to make changes in my life, to simplify a little bit, to enjoy each day, to make decisions that are clearly thought out about what is my legacy? What is my legacy?
Yes.
As a grandmother, as a mother, as my writer, I'm pretty comfortable.
Yes,
with that.
You are obviously definitely a writer.
And ditto, Nancy, ditto. I mean, you and I have really achieved quite a bit in our careers.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we still don't want to write, and we still don't want to. I have so many books I want to write, but it's also balanced a little bit more after COVID. I'm so grateful to have my health and my, yes, I had losses, but all of us got through this.
Well, most
You
of-
know,
yes.
we did.
And I think you have a husband who cooks. Do you know?
Doesn't your husband cook?
No. And I've told him about this many times. No, he doesn't. But
I keep thinking he must, because you work so hard.
I just don't talk to my children about my cooking because they survived.
But here we are. I see, oh my gosh, Belmont Books has reappeared. But I have to say, one of the things that Nancy and I share so much. I mean, if you love Nancy's books, you'll love mine. If you love my books, you'll love Nancy's, because we both write to the heart of family and relationships. We really do. Nancy, I can read your book, and a woman sewing a t-shirt is fascinating because of the way we care about them and we know them so well. That's a real talent. It's not just she's sewing a shirt. It's such a vital part of the story. And every detail in your storytelling is so powerful that you make us feel like we're part of the family in all your books, but in this one, especially Family Reunion, I have to say, I look forward to your book every year.
Do you do storytelling because you have the voice and the manner of someone who could like enchant whole classrooms, even of teenage children? Have you done that?
I do read my audiobooks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you do?
I do.
Wow.
But I haven't read the last two because of COVID.
Well,
And the middle grade book, for the Islanders, I said, I don't want to read it. I think a male voice, because it's a primary character is a boy. And I said, my voice is low, but I think I wanted a voice above, a little different. But I thank you very much. I do enjoy that.
well, I don't know.
I'm going to jump in. I'm sorry.
We can talk for an hour.
I know.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So there are some questions from people who are watching this. So I thought we'd try to get some of those answered. So Anissa said, for both authors, what are you most proud of as a writer and as a person?
Ooh.
You take that.
All right. It's a pretty easy one for me. I think what I'm most proud of is how the last 20 years, the books that I've written, it's that what's transcended storytelling is the inspiring people to action. And so many people I always say, if you care, you take care. And I think people who have fallen in love with the species, whatever species they love most, and maybe I haven't written about the one they love most, but it makes them feel like they're citizens of the world, that they're part of this planet. And because they saw the species through the emotions of my characters. So that call to action, I think, is what I'm most proud of.
I understand that, and we had talked before about the fact that your first book and my first book came out very well, relatively close together. And what I'm most proud of as a writer is that when my first book came out in 1980, it was called Stepping. It was about being a stepmother. And I've always wanted to write about family and women. And of course they have romance because we all want romance, but there are so many other things too. And when Stepping came out, there was no Oprah Winfrey. And there wasn't even a Phil Donahue. So I feel like I have kept women at the center of my books as intelligent and generous. Oh gosh, so generous. Mothers, women were so generous.
Yes.
And that's another reason I love your book, The Summer of Lost and Found. So I've wandered off the topic. Stacey, I'll let you.
Good.
No, you did. It was lovely.
Barbara said, when on vacation in the Charleston area, can you join a turtle team?
No, the turtle team is a very defined group of people with a lot of training. And there's the people who walk to look for tracks, and there's the people who monitor the nests. But now that COVID's over, we do have what we call inventories. And that is the third day after the emergence, we actually open up the nest and we see what's in there. We have to monitor, count hatched and unhatched eggs. And every once in a while, we see a couple trapped hatchlings. And everyone's like, oh, because they really are little babies. They're so cute. And it's that we save them. We literally save them. So that we can open to the public. And the other place I would recommend going, anywhere in Florida, because they have many, many, many more turtles. But I know Hilton Head actually does beach walks, which would nowhere else in the state is South Carolina is allowed to do that.
Nice. Heidi asked if you have a certain approach or strategy for getting the first sentence or paragraph to begin a book with. And I imagine that's probably for both of you.
Nancy, you take that one first. That's a tough one.
I write the first sentence, and I know when I'm writing it that it may not be the first sentence. It may not ever be in the book at all. And I mentioned this when Mary Alice, in her group, Friends in Fiction, which I think everybody should, you can watch it on YouTube, and they interview so many writers and they ask for a writing tip. And my writing tip is don't be afraid to cut, because you can put it on a separate folder, which is what I do. It's cuts is what it's called. And then it's there, you haven't lost it. So I write the first sentence and just charge right into it.
I totally agree with Nancy on that. It's and I actually have my file too. I put cuts because every word you have to understand is not a pearl for the book. The other thing I say is what I after I've got all this information, like right now, literally, I am dreaming the book I want to write. It's like choking me. And I'm just waiting for the moment I can finish book tour and start to write, like I've cleared the decks. And what I do is I call it projectile writing. And it all comes out, and I go for days where I hardly write, and it's bad. I mean, I just get it out. But that first sentence, I know, and it's scary. Because I know when I get to that point, it's like, oh, because I know it's going to set the tone for the whole book. And Nancy's right. I may not keep it, but it's important to set the tone. And that's when so once I get past that fear, get it down, then I just let it rush it through. And you will likely, like Nancy said, change that sentence 100%. You'll probably not even use the first chapter.
Sophie would like to know, what is your favorite book to read when you're not writing books? And do you have a favorite genre?
Oh, Mary Alice, that's yours.
Well, if I'm not reading Nancy's books, Celine, I cannot read Nancy's books while I'm writing my book, because she and I have similar style. You know what I mean? We're kind of going for the same things. So
for the natural world, I think that's
yes,
the natural
yes,
so much
and
fun.
Yeah, we share that natural world, and also the love of women's lives. I mean, we're very much akin. And so I would not read a book that I'm akin to while I'm writing, but I do so much research while I'm reading that my old rule used to be don't read fiction, anything like what you write. And now with Friends in Fiction, though, I've been having to read a lot, and it kind of changes my rules a little bit, but I don't like to read any fiction that's about women's lives or nature or anything. I read a lot of nonfiction or other books because you don't know, you don't want anyone else's words in your head.
I read a lot of mysteries. I can read the most.
There you are.
Things. I'm like,
There you are.
okay, I want to go see somebody be killed, and because that's not good. You do love your animals.
Anissa would like to know how many books will be in the Islanders series.
Oh, thank you for asking. 2 for sure. There's this one, and we're next summer, in the summer of probably May, June, probably June 2022 will be, I think it's called Return to the Island. And it's a sequel to this one. And after that, I'm not sure. We'll see. See how many you see. I want to hear. I hope you all buy a copy because that'll definitely influence whether I write more books.
Great. All right.
And please buy
Well,
it
I
from
don't see any
Belmont
other-
Books. By the way,
Thank you.
buy it from, I have to say, let me just make a plug here for Belmont.
Thank you.
Everybody, we are here because of Belmont Books. They hosted us, they're presenting everything. If you want, I will make sure that, and Nancy will for sure, because she's close, but I will send autographed book plates and cute little stickers to go with the Islanders for this
Oh.
one, and autographed book plates for the Summer of Lost and Found to Belmont
Wonderful.
Books if you buy the books from them tonight. And if you let them know
Thank
it's
you.
personalized, and Nancy, I'm sure you agree, for family reunion, if you let them know, we can personalize it. We'll just email the names, but absolutely we'll get those books autographed for you.
And
Nancy,
I'm-
you agree, right?
I agree. I will do that. I have to say, hi, Nico, because my best friend's grandson lives in Belmont, and he's
Oh, okay.
really cool. And he's going to come into your bookstore, I'm sure. He's only 11, so he'll probably bring
Oh.
his father.
That is the perfect age for the
Yeah.
Islanders.
And we have a great kids section, so
Oh, you know what?
Tell
We
'em
have
to
some
come on
really
down.
cute, we have tattoos and stickers. And one of the things that we're giving away, and if you buy the book today, the Islanders, I'll send it to Belmont. We have made these really specially designed stickers that go on top of like I wish I had one. The composition notebooks we all have. They cost 50 cents, 75 cents. You put it on top. And it's you can color it and all that, but it's called the Islanders with all the animals on it. And you can put it on your
Oh, cool.
composition, and we give you stickers to put in there for you to start your own journal, kids. So, or if you're a
Nice.
grandparent or a parent, give that to your child because you want them to draw the flower that they found in the wildflower, or draw the bird that they just saw and then help them look up the name. So this little journal becomes a way your kids know the names of what's around in their own backyard. Up in Massachusetts, you've got some wonderful wildlife.
You
Me too.
do, in the water too.
Yes.
I
Yes.
can testify to that. We had 2 snakes in our garage the other day, so
See, now you want to, what I would say is you draw the snake, the color, and then you go look it up and you write down the name. So next time you see that snake, you know the name. You and the child,
Absolutely.
see? Nature makes
That's
children of
great.
us all, I always say.
Well, this was a great conversation. The 2 of you have a wonderful rapport, and I think, your
Thanks.
books both sound great. And we thank everybody for coming out for this great conversation. And we thank you, Mary Alice and Nancy, so much for participating. And we wish you all well.
Thank you. And Nancy, thank you for talking tonight about the Summer of Lost and Found. And you look fabulous, darling. It's so great to see you.
It's wonderful talking about that, about your book and the Islanders. You have 2 books out, and they are the cure for COVID. Let me tell you.
Oh,
Jump into yeah. So I loved this. Thank you, Belmont Books, for this opportunity.
thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.